Hi again, everybody. Welcome to the Cleveland Public Library Sports Research Room. And our guest today is Len Barker, famous Indians pitcher. Today's date is July 6th, 2016. Tomorrow, you turn 61 years old, Len. Tomorrow is, on July 7th, is Len Barker's birthday. Born 1955, and he'll turn 61 tomorrow. Now, of course, his claim to fame, everybody knows about Len Barker's perfect game in 1981. But there's a lot more to Len Barker than just that perfect game. For instance, first of all, let's cover your pitching. Born, of course, in Fort Knox, Kentucky. Your dad was a master sergeant in the Army, and then grew up in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. 11-year major league career, with an overall record of 74 and 76. He was with the Indians from 1979 to 1983. You were in some major trades, for example. Checking my notes here. You were traded from Texas to Cleveland on October 3rd, 1978. And you were traded along with Bobby Bonds for pitcher Jim Kern and infielder Larvell Blanks from the Indians in one of the all-time great swindles in baseball history. Oh, my God. So anyway, in favor of the Indians, Gabe Paul should have been put in jail for that one. Anyway, in 1983, August 28th, you were traded to Atlanta. The Indians got, this is another swindle, the Indians got Brooke Jacoby, Brett Butler, Rick Behenna, and $150,000 for it. The Indians needed that $150,000 to meet payroll at that time. Those were silly
Those were good
days.
trades. They were both good trades for the Indians. One,
yes.
They got me from Texas, and then
That's right.
Then they sent me to Atlanta, and they got a better trade because I got hurt down there.
Yes, okay.
And I was hurt probably here. That's when it started.
Okay. And tell us about the injury that ended your career.
Well, I had major arm surgery where they transplanted the ulnar nerve, and what I thought they were going
The ulnar nerve, okay.
Right. Yeah, I don't have a funny bone anymore on my arm. I can bang it and it doesn't hurt.
Really?
But what happened was I thought I was going in for surgery to have I had a bone spur right in where the ligament is, and they ended up cutting the muscle on my forearm to move the ulnar nerve and put the muscle on top of it to protect it. Mm-hmm. And it took me a year and a half to get back to at least throwing 88 miles an hour. But I never regained my speed, and I didn't want to become a finesse pitcher.
Well, yeah, right. You were a power pitcher. You were throwing as much as 96, 97 miles an hour?
Yeah, I was throwing, 96, 97 pretty consistently. And even towards the end of the game, I was still throwing pretty hard. So, I like throwing the ball by guys, and I didn't want to change. I had a chance to sign with Milwaukee again in 1988, but I just wasn't having fun. I enjoyed throwing the ball by guys. That was me. I didn't want to have to throw change-ups and curveballs and all that. I just didn't enjoy that.
Well, now, the operation you had on your elbow, would it be called Tommy John surgery today?
Yeah, I would think it's Tommy John, where they're replacing.
They didn't use that word back then.
No, they just called it an ulnar nerve transplant, and so
an ulnar nerve transplant.
Right.
That was pretty daring in those days.
Yeah. They told me I was losing feeling in my hand, and I kept telling them, I said, I can feel everything in my fingers, And doctors back then, they wanted to. I guess they used some of us as experiments.
Really?
Yeah.
You were a guinea pig.
I was a guinea pig.
Wow.
But, I enjoyed playing baseball. It was fun.
Okay. You made a lot of money for those days. Almost $6 million.
Yeah.
Is any of it left?
Oh, yeah, I got some left.
Do you really?
Yeah, I invested.
That's great.
I didn't blow all my money, but I had a divorce and had some problems with the IRS. But we're doing fine.
Okay. Now you come to the Indians, and you were the ace of the staff for a few years here. Indians get you in 1979. I was on the baseball beat at that time.
Right.
I covered you then. You had been pretty much a closer. They didn't even have the word closer in baseball terms back in those days. But you were the relief pitcher, the end of the game guy for the Rangers, weren't you? And
I was, yeah. The reason that was because they had Fergie Jenkins, Gaylord Perry, and Bert Bylev and John Matlack and Doyle Alexander were the 5 starters.
Gee.
So I was a starter all the way
Yeah.
through
Oh.
the minor league system.
Okay.
And when I got up to the majors with Texas, I think that was some part of the reason why they traded me.
Oh.
Because
And-
of those guys.
And then, of course, you saved the Indians. You in your second year, you were a starter with a 19-12 record, and then you went 8-7, and then 15-11. One of those years was the strike year, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
when I was 8-7. It was 1981.
Okay, 81 was also the year of your perfect game.
Right.
Let's return to those magical days of 1981 with the Cleveland Indians. It was May 15th, 1981.
Right.
A Friday night, sort of a gloomy, drizzly Friday night, wasn't
It
it?
was about 42 degrees and
Yes.
and a little drizzly. Nothing. It was a typical time of year for
Yes.
the weather for that time of year.
Would you take us through that day? And because I wonder how many similarities were there with Harvey Haddix, pitched a perfect game.
Right.
He was our pitching coach, but he was let go after the 78 season. You didn't really know Harvey Haddix.
I didn't know Harvey at all. I mean,
Well,
I met him before,
yeah.
but I didn't know him that
well. He had an interesting day. I did a big story on him one time about that day he threw his perfect game. He was with Pittsburgh. Now let's do the same with you and take us through that. You get up at what time? Your normal time? It was your pitching day?
Yeah, I probably got up about 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
Had something very, very light to eat. And that day was a little different because my brother was flying in from New York. So I went to the airport to pick him up, and his plane was late. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and I kept looking at my watch. And it was 5:30, and usually I was at the ballpark by then because it was a 7:05 game. And finally he got there, and I had to race downtown, get to the ballpark. And I got to the ballpark. I was probably there at 20 after 6.
So this was not your normal
No.
routine. It was sort of hectic.
It was a hectic day.
So-
So I had to run in and get Jimmy
Yeah.
Warfield to rub up my arm like we normally did, put my uniform on real quick and go outside and stretch. And so everything was kind of rushed. But I was warming up in the bullpen. I felt pretty good. I've been having with the team where we were in first place at the time. And,
Oh, we were.
Yeah, and the pitchers the starting pitchers were doing a great job. All 5 of us. It was tremendous. It was kind of like the staff.
Okay,
they
the
have
other
now.
starters were you, Rick Waits, and who else?
Levin, Sutcliffe, and John Denny.
Oh, yes.
So we had a pretty good staff.
Yes.
And so the game started, and I was throwing mainly fastballs first 3 innings, and then I didn't strike anybody out. And then the 4th inning, we started moving along, and me and Hasse saw that I was throwing a pretty good curveball.
That was your catcher, Ron Hasse.
Yeah, Ron Hasse was the only catcher to catch 2 perfect games. He caught up mine and Dennis Martinez in Montreal.
Oh.
So we saw that we were throwing the curveball, and it was they couldn't hit it, and I had good control of it. So we stuck with that, and we got to the last inning. And well, in the 8th inning, Toby Hare and Rick Manning came over to me because I was at one end of the bench, and everybody else was piled up in the
Really?
corner, except for Toby and Rick. And they came over to me and said, "We're behind you. We know you can do this."
Really?
And everybody else was down in the corner, and I even
Because
said
the old
something.
baseball custom guy has a no-hitter going.
Yeah,
and
stay
you-
away from him.
Yes.
But I wasn't a superstitious guy,
No.
so I didn't. I even yelled to him. I said, "Hey, I don't have the plague. Don't worry about it." But anyway, the 9th inning, and walk out there, and I was pretty nervous. I picked.
So
the
you
ball.
were well aware of it by at what inning were you aware that?
I was aware of it after the 6th inning that I had
yeah.
a perfect game. I had no hitters going before into the
really?
7th, but I knew I had a perfect game going, and it was rolling pretty good with it. I never got a 3-ball count on any hitter. So in the 9th inning, I walked out there, picked the ball up, and almost fell over. I was pretty nervous.
Really?
And then I started throwing my warm-up pitches, and I got back into the groove real quick. And they sent a pitch hitter up. I think it was Al Woods, and I struck him out on 3 pitches. And then the next guy came up, and then the last out was Ernie Witt. Once I threw that last pitch, I knew that that it was a perfect game. And the last 17 guys I faced, I struck 11 of them out, so they didn't put the ball in play too much. But it was a great night, just not for me pitching a perfect game. It was for, it was all the mistake on the leg and bad mouth in Cleveland and all that. And I loved it here. And, you know, it was great for the whole city. Everybody shared in it, the city and you know, part of the state that wasn't Cincinnati Red fans.
It wasn't really raining, but it was very high humidity, wasn't it? Cloudy, almost foggy.
Well, it was 42 degrees, 42 degrees, so it was misty, kind of misty, rain, and it was cool night. But that didn't, somebody asked me if I was throwing a spitball, but
Oh, what?
I didn't learn how to throw a spitball from Gaylord. He told me I threw too hard to learn. He said, when you get older, I'll teach you.
So what did you do afterward that night?
Well, we went back to my house and had a few cocktails and celebrated with the team. And a lot of guys they left because we had a day game. We were on the game of the week the next day.
Oh, you were?
And so they had to go back and be ready to play the next day.
Well, now the game of the week, naturally, did the network want to interview you before the game the next day?
Well, it wasn't a network. I don't know if you remember Brian Gumbel.
Sure.
He wanted to fly me to New York and do his show. And Bobby D was coming in there and calling me, and I said, "Bobby, I'm not going to do that. I don't need the publicity. I don't care about that stuff because I didn't do commercials.
You didn't.
I didn't do any of that. I was baseball. That was it. And I told him I didn't want to do it. And I guess Brian Gumbel was pissed off, but I didn't do it.
Gee. You didn't do commercials either.
No, well, I did one for a couple for charity.
Yeah.
You know, the March of Dimes, I did one, and but I just didn't do that stuff. I was focused on playing baseball. I was making decent money, and you know, I wanted to rather be around my family. And I know a lot of these guys take off and they do commercials all over the place, and they're playing baseball. You're away from your family as it is, and you start doing all these commercials. You're away all the time.
Yes.
So I didn't do that. I wanted to, when I had time to be with my family, I wanted to be with them.
Did you ever regret getting that elbow injury, what you might have done in your career, giving you another 5 years?
Yeah, you know, I mean, you think about stuff like that. It's part of the game. I was never hurt until 30 years old. So, you know, I don't look back and say, well, if I never had my elbow hurt, what could I have done? It, you know, it's just part of playing sports. I enjoyed the 15 years I played professionally, you know, 4 in the minors, 11 in the majors, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Do you remember the standing ovation you got, the 1981 All-Star Game? It was not played at the normal time. We had that long strike.
Right.
And the strike ended with the All-Star Game here in Cleveland. And, of course, you're picked for the All-Star team, of course. Everybody out of shape. You can remember Hal Lebovitz wrote many columns when they said that we were going to resume the season with the All-Star Game in Cleveland. Hal felt that he was the sports editor of the Plain Dealer at the time, and that the fans in Cleveland were being cheated with a All-Star Game played with All-Stars who were out of shape. And what kind of shape were you in, by the way?
I was throwing.
Were you?
I went to Pennsylvania. That's where I grew up, outside of Philly. But I had a catcher there. You know, I was fishing and having a good time. But I had a catcher there that I threw to every other day.
Really?
So, and I ran, and I stayed in shape because we didn't know how long the strike was going to be. If it was going to be a week,
That's right.
2 days, or a month, and it ended up, I think it was 51 or 52 days. But I worked out every day, you know, and I wanted to make sure, because the first game I came back, I went into the 9th inning, pitching against the Brewers, so I was still in good shape.
Okay. So anyway, the All-Star teams are lined up down the baselines, and when they announce you, how long did the standing ovation last? A couple minutes?
It seemed like it was a couple minutes. It was great, you know. I mean, that's what you think of besides being in the World Series, is playing in an All-Star team in your home ballpark.
Yes.
And I think there was like 75,000 people though. So it was a great day. And it was good for the city of Cleveland. You know, like I said, we were in first place at the time, and we didn't end up in first place, but.
As we well remember. You threw in your 11 years 27 complete games. Entire teams don't throw 27. Well, of course, that was in the course of your career, but in several of your seasons, you'd have 7, 8, 9 complete games. In fact, I wrote it down here somewhere here. But anyway.
They had 11 one
11,
year.
okay.
Yeah.
Entire teams today do not have 11 perfect games out of their entire staff.
Well,
What's
back then, when we were given the ball, we wanted to go the 9 innings. That's the way we were geared up. And the way it is now, you know as much as I do, it's about money. They pay these guys a lot of money. They have a starter. He's geared to go 5-6 innings, and then they have a middle reliever who they pay $3 million or $4 million to, and then they have a setup guy they pay $7 million to, and then they got a closer that they're paying $15 million. So they gotta use those guys, and that's why you don't see a lot of complete games anymore because of the money. But when we played, it was, you got the ball in the beginning, you didn't want to come out. I mean, I had a lot of arguments with my managers walking out there and saying, don't take me out. I said, look who's down in the bullpen. I said, would you rather have me finish the game or would you rather have them come in? And that wasn't always, sometimes there were some good guys down there, but we said that because we wanted to be in the game. We wanted to finish what we started.
Well, there was no pitch count in those days.
I threw 197 pitches in a 9-inning game before.
You did?
Yeah.
Somebody was counting the pitches?
Yeah. So,
Wow.
we had guys that charted the game.
Yes.
Before you pitched, you chart the game and you kept the amount of pitches.
That's right. That's
well,
right.
We didn't have a pitch count. I mean, I talked to Sam McDowell. He told me he threw like 260 pitches in a game before.
Wow.
So that there was the only time you would have a pitch count is if you were hurt, you're on the DL, you came back, you would throw a couple starts at 100 pitches, and then after that you go as far as
That's
you
right.
want.
Now it's coming back to me. The next game starter sat there with a clipboard,
Kept the chart.
and he kept charted every pitch.
Yep.
Wow.
They don't do that nowadays.
No, they don't.
I thought that helped the guy that was pitching the next day pay attention to their hitters, and you're into the game more, and you're seeing what they're swinging at and all that, and it helped you out a lot. I used to go out and watch the other team hit BP the day that I was pitching because I wanted to see the way some guys were swinging, and it helped me. And, any way you get an edge on the hitters, you got to do that.
Do you think that throwing all those innings took a toll on your elbow?
No, what took a toll, why I had the bone spur was because I played football in high school, and I guess I was an idiot. I carried the ball. I was a fullback, and I carried the ball with my right hand, my right arm, and I took a lot of pounding on the elbow. So if I would have been smart, I would have carried it with the left arm, but, back then you're 17, 18 years old, and you don't think of that stuff. But, no, it wasn't from pitching. It was from playing football.
And then, what did you do immediately after you retired?
Well, I was living in Atlanta. I got into a few adventures. I owned a video store, and then I owned a used car lot. I had that probably for 10 years, and then I got divorced, and I left Atlanta and met a girl from Kenston High School here in Cleveland, got married, and came back here and been here for about 19 years now. Got three great sons, one of them which is here.
Yes.
And enjoy life. And I'm the head baseball coach now at Notre Dame College.
That's what we've got to get into now. Now you wind up being a coach, a manager.
Yeah.
And you're having pretty good seasons at Notre Dame College in South Euclid.
Right. We've had 3 winning seasons in a row, first time in school history, and we've made the playoffs 3 years in a row.
That's NCAA Division II.
Right.
Yes. You give baseball scholarships.
We have 9 scholarships that we could give at our school.
And you spread them out. Maybe you got a half scholarship here, and
or a quarter here, or if we find a guy that's a real stud baseball player that we think can go to the next level, we're going to give him more money. We're going to give him more of a scholarship, 80%, 90%. We've given out 2 full rides since I've been there.
Have you?
Yeah, and that doesn't happen very often. We have 45 players on the team. Only 9 of them are on athletic money. So it's difficult. A lot of people think they all get athletic money. It's very difficult to get athletic. D1, D2. Of course, D3 doesn't have athletic money.
How did you get into this coaching in college?
Well, here's how it went. I was in the construction business for a long time, about 18 years, and I just had knee replacement on both knees at the same time. And I was going to the fantasy camp.
My God, you're breaking down.
Well, I'm bionic man now. I have no problems. And I go to fantasy camp, and Charbonneau's there, and he's an assistant coach at Notre Dame. And I guess he had something going on there. He didn't do it anymore. He said, "Hey, Bark, there's an opening at Notre Dame to be an assistant coach." And so I called, applied for it, and I got the assistant job.
Who was the head coach at the time?
It was a guy named Nick Weisseipel. He was a real young guy. He was about 30 years old. And he was the head coach there. And I was there for 3 years as assistant, and then he left, and they made me the head coach. He left to go to Villanova as a pitching coach.
And then now you brought Joe Charbonneau back.
Joe's been helping out. He did a great job with us. He came through halfway through the year to help with the hitters, and hopefully I can, with colleges, we're on budgets, and I got to do all the budgets, and we have to. We want to get him back so he can help us because he does a tremendous job.
Okay, now at 61, and now you're a young college head coach. What is this the rest of your working life?
This is it. Really? I told my wife that I got to, because my son Jake is 11. He's got to go through college, so I got to work until I'm 70. So I'll be coaching. And I told him at the colleges, as long as you have me, and they said that you're there, but you know how that goes. But they said, I love it over there at Notre Dame, and I'll keep working coaching until I'm 70. And then I'm retiring after 70 years old.
And do you still do some hunting and fishing?
I hunt and fish all the time. I got my boys hunting and fishing, and it's just it's everybody thinks you're going out and killing the animals. I love going out there and being in the woods, and I've seen so many different things. And you don't kill something every day. I've seen hawks fly down, pick up squirrels. I've seen snakes. I've seen all kinds of different animals and it's beautiful just to be out there. I enjoy it. But everything that we kill, hunting-wise and fishing, we eat. We don't discard it, or like a lot of people. I've turned guys in I've seen them shoot something, they just leave it lay there.
Really?
Yeah, that's not hunting. That's just killing. But I enjoy it. It's just being in the outdoors. It's a lot of fun, and I teach my sons all that, and hopefully they teach their family. And it's, being in the outdoors is a great thing. It keeps you out of trouble too.
Okay, let's look at the game in general, how it was in your day and how it is now. But you played for a lot of managers. You played for Texas Rangers, Indians, Atlanta Braves, Milwaukee Brewers. You played for a lot of managers. Who stood out?
By far, Dave Garcia was probably my favorite manager out of all of them.
And why was that?
He was just a great guy. I mean, he'd chew your butt,
really? But
he wouldn't hold things against you. Yeah. He was a veteran type of manager, Yes. They hated rookies. These veteran managers hated rookies. They couldn't do anything right until they started hitting a bunch of home runs and doing all that, and then they liked them. But Dave was just just not a good manager, but he was a great person all around wise. He treated guys like their sons, and everybody was family, and he was tremendous. But as far as a total manager of everything of the whole game, Joe Torre, when I played in Atlanta, he expected you to do your job, which Dave did too. But he had everything up to par where the game was managed, and he was a great manager.
Torre, you said.
Joe Torre.
Joe Torre.
Yep.
Later managed the Yankees, I believe.
Won a few World Series.
Yes, he did. Yep. Didn't the Steinbrenner fire him?
Yes. He fired everybody. I think he brought him back, just like Martin.
Yes. You never played for Billy in Texas.
I was in the minor leagues when Billy was there, so I was in the minors, so I never got to play for him. But I met Billy quite a few times, of course, pitching against his teams in Oakland and the Yankees.
Now, what was your reaction when you were traded to Cleveland?
I was kind of hurt.
Yeah.
I was shocked in the beginning. I was hurt.
Players did not want to come here to play.
Well, that wasn't the reason. It was just more somebody didn't want you.
No.
But then the more I thought about it, I was saying, well, Cleveland traded for me. They want me. So I started thinking, and I came here and visited and got on the trail that they used to have where you went around. and I liked
Oh,
it.
the winter,
Bus
yeah,
tour
yeah,
or whatever.
Yeah, uh-huh.
And I came here and met the people, and that's why I moved back here. I love Cleveland. I always have. Even when I got traded to Atlanta, and that one didn't hurt me as much because I was going from a last place team to a first place team. But the first time I was hurt because I was still young. I was only like 22 years old, 23 years old.
Well, you were lucky because one of the first persons you met when you were traded to Cleveland was me.
Right, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was the baseball writer for the Plain Dealer then.
That was a
Oh,
long
yes.
time ago, Danny.
Yes,
long time ago.
We did have good times back then,
Yeah.
Len.
I enjoyed my days in Cleveland. That's why I wouldn't have came back if I didn't love the town and the people. I grew up in Philly. Philly is almost just like Cleveland. It's the same type of hardworking people and baseball fans, except baseball fans in Cleveland aren't like the ones in Philly. They call it the city of brotherly love, but they sure can boo you real quick
Really?
in a second there. So.
So now Langhorne, is that? I didn't realize that was so close to Philly.
Right, it's probably about 25 minutes outside of Philadelphia.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's where the high school was. I lived in Trevose, Pennsylvania, which was real close, but Langhorne was where my high school was.
They've got a big racetrack.
It used to be there.
IndyCar racetrack.
I don't know if there's one there. It used to be when I was growing up. It was called the Langhorne 500.
Yeah.
They had a big races there, and then they did away with it. But, yeah, it was a big time then. And we used to go as kids and watch that track.
Yes.
And go down in the city, take the buses. And that's when they had all the wrestling. Bobo Brazil, I don't know if you remember
Really?
those names.
Well, oh, sure, I remember them.
Yeah.
Those guys used to wrestle at the Cleveland Arena.
Yeah, and they did it down at the Philadelphia. We used to go down there and watch them. Take a bus down or a trolley. It was pretty neat times.
Okay, well, you've had a wonderful life here. What other changes? You mentioned the people throwing almost 200 pitches in a game. Sam McDowell claiming that he threw like 260 pitches in a game.
Right.
That's incredible. Now let's think back to the days of Walter Johnson. But then not only would they would always go 9 innings, but the games went so much faster.
Right.
They were often played in less than 2 hours.
And those guys back then would pitch one day and then maybe relieve the next day. Or they would pitch one day and then 2 days later pitch. So they pitched a lot of innings back then. I mean, you look at Cy Young's record. What do he have, 500 and some wins?
Something like that.
So he had to be pitching an awful lot.
Yes.
So it was different. It was now it's because of the money. I mean, that's if you're investing in a young kid and you're paying them a lot of money, you don't want to blow them out. You don't want them going out there and they feel that pitching 9 innings or 8 innings takes a toll on these guys. And
How do you treat your pitchers at Notre Dame College?
if a guy is pitching good and he's not struggling, I'll let him finish the game. But if we see that he's struggling and he gets to a certain point in pitching, we'll take him out. But it's you got to. I feel if a guy is strong, as strong in the first as he is in the 7th or the 8th inning, there's no reason why not to let him finish the game. And it also helps your bullpen. You got to give your bullpen a rest, and that's what helped us a lot. We only carried 9 or 10 pitchers when we were playing. Yeah. Now what do they carry? 11 and 12 on the staff.
Yes.
So we had to pitch a lot. So that's why that's another reason too. They completed a lot of games.
Okay. Now the Indians were rather penurious back in those days. I noticed that as soon as you were traded to Atlanta, your salary doubled.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I was going to be a free agent at the end of that year, and I wanted to sign with Cleveland. And Gabe, for some reason, he said, "Well, we'll wait till the end of the year," and all that. So I said, "Gabe, I want to sign here. I'll sign less money and stay here. I have my home here. I've been here for 5 years." I said, "Let's get this done and get it over with, and so I could stay in India." And he kept saying, no. And then finally I came out and said, well, I'm 99.5% sure that I will not be in Cleveland.
Really?
And then about 2 weeks later, I got traded to the Atlanta Braves.
Oh.
Okay, but I loved it here. I couldn't believe that he wouldn't. Gabe was just that way. He was tight, I guess, too tight with the money. And I told him, like I said, I would take a lot less than what I got in Atlanta. And he wouldn't go for that. So. But it was a good trade because I ended up getting hurt. Maybe he's smarter than we think.
Were you here when when Buddy Bell had his big contract dispute, or was that in '78?
That was
a
in
year
78,
before you got here.
Yeah, it was a year before me.
Then he was traded for Toby Harrell,
Right.
whom you knew in Texas.
Right, who I played with Texas,
Yes.
Toby, and I played with Hargrove in Texas,
Oh,
too.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I played with those guys like 7 or 8 years.
Then you all wind up back here
Yeah.
on Dime Beer Night. Oh, no, that's right. You weren't here
I
yet.
was in the minors.
Yes.
I wanted to be here.
Well, okay. Any what have we not covered with the other life of Len Barker here? Other than your perfect game, there's so much more to you.
Well, I led
now-
league in strikeouts 2
Oh,
years in a row.
that's
back
right.
To back, yeah. And I believe people ask me, so what baseball field did you enjoy playing in?
Oh.
And I said every one, because it was being in the major leagues, and that was a dream of mine as a kid to play in the major leagues, and my dream came true. That's why when I give speeches to kids and all that, I tell them, don't let anybody tell you can't do it. Work as hard as you can and try your best, and you never know what's going to happen. Because I see a lot of negativity around where people telling kids, you'll never do anything, or you have no chance to play this or that. I mean, give it your best. And there's too much negativity in the world as it is, so I try to be positive all the time.
Very good. Len, thank you for joining us here at the Cleveland Public Library's Sports Research Department.
Well, thanks, Danny.
And,
I enjoyed it. And your career lasted pretty long, too.
And it's still going on.
I know.
You know, I'm now at the age of 77,
Wow.
trotting the sidelines at high school football games.
That's
on
right.
Friday nights.
Friday
for
Night
Channel
Lights.
8.
We watch
Yes.
that all the time.
Yeah, because you've got sons playing now.
Right.
You've got a son playing for Chardon High School.
Yeah, he's playing for high school, and then I got 2 younger ones that'll
Yes.
eventually be playing there. But yeah, he's playing. He'll be a junior this year, and looking for good things about him. He's 6'6" and a half, weighs 255, and
Wow.
he can run pretty good. And he's getting it. He's starting to get it.
And what sport would you recommend if your kids had the ability to play them all? What would you recommend?
Professionally,
Yeah.
baseball. Because not just because I loved it, but because of the it's not as much wear and tear on your body. And in football, I love playing football, but I made the choice to play baseball because back then, nobody even thought about concussions. I mean, back then, if somebody got hit hard and they staggered to the other huddle, we'd go get them and they'd take them to the sign, give them smelling salts,
That's
and the
right.
next play they were back in.
Oh, and they'd say in the press box, "Oh, he got his bell rung."
Yeah, he got his bell rung. Yeah, he did get his bell rung, and it was still ringing. But nowadays they finally realized that that's what was going on. And no, I tell my sons if they want to play all 3 sports. It makes you a better athlete. And then if you get towards your senior year or something, you decide that you want to concentrate on one, do it. If you want to play all 3, do it. I mean, it's hard enough. Your high school years, you don't want to lose them. You want to have fun, and if you can play all 3 sports, do it.
Okay, Len, this has been a wonderful conversation with you. Reliving the past, our year together in the '79 season, traveling on those, and we hardly ever got a charter flight. I remember one charter flight from Toronto on a 2-engine prop plane.
Wasn't that Wright Airlines?
Yes,
Wright
right,
Airlines.
yes. And it was a one step above a DC-3.
No air condition.
No.
No air conditioning. And it looked like they went out there with rubber bands and flipped
Yes,
them.
yes.
So you remember those
Oh,
flights?
yes, I do.
I was telling quite a few people about that, and they said, "You're kidding me! You guys never did that." I said,
Oh,
"Yeah,
yes.
Wright Airlines. And we flew out of Lake Burkfront,
That's right.
and luckily, we never went down in the lake.
Well, the lake is only 60 feet deep. They would have found us in a few weeks.
Yeah, they would have found us sooner or later. So you enjoyed all that too.
Yes.
back
Oh,
then.
yes.
It wasn't all glamour and glitz like
No,
everybody
it
thinks
wasn't.
is.
Were you on that flight from Minneapolis to Chicago when Victor Cruz and somebody else got in a fist fight on the aisle of the plane?
Yep.
You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Do you remember, you remember somebody letting a stink bomb loose on the plane one time, too?
No, that I don't remember.
that-
But this was not a charter flight. This was a regular
commercial flight.
Commercial flight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike Segi would buy like the tickets for everybody. Everybody got a seat and a half or something.
Right.
So we would sit with the regular passengers.
Yeah.
Oh,
That was crazy.
that was.
It was fun. It was fun. It was fun.
You're not kidding. It was fun. Let me tell you one story before we sign off here. There was that. Was it a Sunday or? No, a midweek day. We had a day game, a getaway game in Minneapolis, and it's a hot middle of the summer. And first of all, it was a regularly scheduled plane, and so we had to wait. The plane wasn't leaving till about 5:30, so it was a fairly quick afternoon game. And now we're sitting in the clubhouse waiting, no rush, waiting to go to the airport. And so some of the boys are into the beer cooler pretty good. And so now we get to the airport, and our plane isn't ready to go yet. So now we're sitting in the bar at the hotel at the airport for a few. And now we get in the air, and a couple more. Stewardess, could we have a couple more? By the time we get to Chicago, and we land. Now on this plane, it was loaded from Minneapolis to Chicago, and there were a bunch of nuns and priests, nuns in their full habits, because they were transferring in Chicago to fly to Rome to visit the Pope.
Pope.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
geez.
yes. So now we land in Chicago, and I'm telling you this as though you weren't there, but I'm sure you were there. And they don't have a gate for us at O'Hare Airport. And we're sitting out there at the end of a runway waiting for a gate. And in order to save the battery on the plane, the pilot turned off the air conditioning. It's 90 degrees in Chicago, and the boys are full of beer. Mm-hmm. And now the next thing you know, Ron Pruitt and Victor Cruz are fist fighting in the aisle, tumbling down the aisle. And nuns are sitting there with their arms up in defensive positions as these bodies come tumbling down. Who is that? Oh my God, it's Pruitt and Cruz. We get off finally. I think that the pilot probably radioed to the tower, an emergency out here, get us a gate. In we go. Back then, you didn't go through the terminal necessarily. Why, they'd have a bus waiting right there on the tarmac.
Right.
And so we're coming down the ramp, getting out of the bus, and I'm waiting at the bottom, waiting to ask Victor Cruz and Ron Pruitt, what were you guys doing? And Ron Pruitt said, oh, we do that out in the bullpen all the time. Oh, why did I ever ask to get off the baseball beat, huh?
See, you would have enjoyed a lot more fun.
Yes, yes.
And we had a lot of fun. Believe me, we had a lot of fun on the
Yes,
planes.
yes, we did. Okay, once again, Len Barker, thanks for joining us, talking about your life and times in baseball here on July 6th, 2016. Happy birthday tomorrow when you turn 61.
Thanks a lot, Danny. Thanks.